Well, now to the war in Ukraine, and Russia's President Vladimir Putin, he's accusing Ukraine of a large-scale provocation after Moscow says Ukraine launched a cross-border attack into Russia. Russia's army chief says up to 1,000 Ukrainian troops crossed into the Kursk region in southwestern Russia and advanced towards the city of Zudsa. Thousands of civilians were evacuated from the area. Russia released footage of what it says are Ukrainian tanks and military vehicles on Russian territory. Moscow said that it launched air and artillery firepower to repel the attack. If confirmed, it would be the largest cross-border incursion by Ukrainian troops since the start of the war. Ukraine has not commented on the claims made by Russia. Hey, for more now, I want to bring in Frank Ledwidge. He is a senior lecturer in strategic studies at Portsmouth University. He's also a former UK military intelligence officer. He joins me tonight from Oxford in England. Frank, it's good to see you again. Ukraine tonight, very silent. Is this a major attack like Russia is saying? Well, good evening, Brent. Depends on the scale you're talking about. What's quite remarkable here is it looks very much like a mirror of the Russian Kharkiv offensive that we'll all remember from about 3 months ago now, which is actually still going on. We're looking at the same amount, or actually a larger amount of territory taken, and possibly the same sort of scale of force used by the Ukrainians as the Russians used in the Kharkiv offensive. So it does seem to be a major incursion. As we speak, the Ukrainians have taken nearly, I think, 300 square kilometers, and they're still pushing. That's the latest reports. The Russians call it a major incursion. It looks like a brigade. Russians say it's a 22nd Mechanized Brigade, which is quite storied over the last couple of years. Very experienced and recently had significant reinforcements of electronic warfare, which they announced quite interestingly. Plus another couple of battalions. So we're looking here at probably 3,000 to 5,000 soldiers involved in the whole operation. I'd say this is not simply a raid. It looks like something a lot more than that. Why would it launch a major operation like this? It's difficult to say. There are two major possibilities. The first is that they are currently or they're in the early stages of something that's been in the air a little bit over the last few weeks. Been hints of it from Ukrainian command, rumors of what amounts to a surprise counter-offensive. I think it's a bit early for that, but it's possible. The second possibility is it's a diversion for even larger assault somewhere else. Some say in Zaporizhia, towards Zaporizhia in the south, or from Zaporizhia to Kherson, around the nuclear power station. We'll see about that. And either way, it looks as if the Ukrainians are trying to take ground off the Russians, preferably, of course, in Russia, to provide themselves some leverage, perhaps, against negotiations which they hope will be with the Russians at a peace conference in around the time of the US elections in November. So there are a number of reasons flowing together, if you like, that gives some logic to what otherwise might just seem a rather strange thing to do. Well, Frey, talk me through that then. So this attack is a preview of what, or is pre-planning of what peace negotiations or I mean, so we've got an attack that's going to lead possibly to an end to this conflict. Is that what you're saying? Zelensky would like the Russians present in November at the next peace conference. As you remember, neither the Russians or the Chinese turned up at the last one. They're hoping the Russians will at the next one, which will certainly be a beginning of negotiation. Now, whether that will result in anything's neither, who knows? It's crystal ball stuff. Of course, there's the US elections, which is a far more strategically important occasion. But either way, it makes sense for the Ukrainians to set a fait accompli, if you like, or at least set the grounds for having something to give. Now, if they hold a few dozen square miles of Russian territory at that point, which is rather doubtful, I think, at least has been come on to, if you like, then that gives them something to bargain with. Now, that's what some analysts are saying. So it makes sense to me. Another, and I think less plausible, or if this is the reasons, I don't think it makes sense, is that the Ukrainians are trying to draw Russian forces from the southern front, southern eastern front. I don't think that makes sense in terms of the balance of benefit on either side. Yeah, it's fascinating of what could be, the impetus of this attack. But do we know, was there any suggestion that something like this might happen, or has it caught Russia completely off guard? There has been a suggestion of it, in the sense that, as I said, that there's been this in the air, and it continues to be there, that the Ukrainians are planning some form of counterattack. I doubt whether the manpower for something very big. We're looking here, half a divisional size. The answer to the second part of your question, were the Russians ready for? Absolutely not. For no defenses, these forces carved through the Russian border in short order, spread out on 2 or 3 axes. Now are either advancing towards or actually in the village of Sudza in the province or the oblast of Kursk. What will happen, though, is they're going to come up against prepared Russian positions, which they're unlikely to breach in the near future. But what we are seeing is an undefended border exploited by surprise, no question about it, by a few thousand Ukrainian soldiers. Let's see if they have the forces ready to exploit those advances, or whether they even want to. It's conceivable they may just dig in and say, okay, now get us out. Frank, do we have any indication of what type of Ukrainian troops are involved here? I mean, we had seen Ukrainian militias comprised of Russian citizens launching attacks inside Russia before. That's right. And you're talking, of course, about the 2 incursions into the Belgorod region, which is to the south of this one. This is towards Kursk. We're in the Kursk oblast here. Couple of which is the city of Kursk, and of course the place of the great battle of the Second World War. This, however, is a formed Ukrainian brigade, plus a couple of battalions. These aren't Russian irregulars or dissidents, or gangs of armed men, like, as the Russians would describe the Belgrade incursion. This is a proper mechanized brigade, well-trained, experienced, well-equipped from what we've seen so far. It's much more serious than anything happened in Belgorod before. Now, whether it'll remain such, we'll see. Certainly the Russians are mobilizing the ground forces now, and they're giving the Ukrainians a hard time from the air and from drones as we speak, and artillery. There will be counterattacks. It may well be they'll be driven back. But this is a very different thing from the Belgorod incursions earlier this year and last year. I mean, in terms like this could be an event that would give the Ukrainian military possibly some good news to bring home from the battlefield. And how badly does Ukraine need their, considering the problems that they're having with recruiting soldiers at the moment? Yes, this looks a bit very much like the Kharkiv offensive in late 2022, doesn't it? Where a relatively small Ukrainian force scattered poorly, very few Russian forces, but gained a great deal of land. We're looking here a couple of 100 square kilometers. And now, when you look at it on the map, it doesn't look that great, but it's very significant, the context of this war. So it is good news for them, there's no doubt about it. However, if you are fighting on the shaky southern and eastern fronts now down in Luhansk and Donetsk, you may be thinking, you know what? We need those troops here to shore up our defenses. But clearly Ukrainian command had seen an advantage here. They saw an opportunity, and we'll see if they reinforce that opportunity over the next few weeks or days or even hours. It's likely, in my view, by the way, this will turn into something like what we see in the Russians doing towards Kharkiv, where they're holding on to a chunk of Ukrainian territory against fairly superior in that location Ukrainian forces. It may well be that we'll see that mirrored in Kursk, having Ukrainians hold on to defensive positions in Russia. And that in itself is quite remarkable and undoubtedly will do no harm to Ukrainian morale. And as you say, it may give the Ukrainians a little bit more to have in their pocket if indeed they do end up sitting down at the negotiating table to end this war. Military analyst Frank Ledwidge. Frank, as always, we appreciate your analysis. Thank you. Thanks, Brent.